which is in Exodus. The Zohar has a long discourse on Shabbat, and he himself says, "V'shoel Mayu Shabbat, Dahanu lama nikrat b'shem Shabbat." Why is it called Shabbat? Im toma mishum hashvita shekatuv bo kivo Shabbat yafahu. In other words, like we said before, it says vayishbot, it says shvita, right? However, says the Zohar, that's only nice, meaning it's superficial, and it would be correct, but the inner meaning of this word Shabbat goes far beyond the aspect of not working. We discussed before, we have 6 days of the week, and then you have the creation of the 7th day, and we concluded that on the seventh day, the Lord injected this aspect of balance automatically within the universe. And this created harmony, symmetry, and a kind of balance throughout the universe. The 3rd day, from a Kabbalistic point of view, is referred to as the Sphira of Teferet, meaning it deals with the 3rd Sphira, which again is called a balancing energy, thought, intelligence. The 6th day, Yesod, if you know your triad, right, in the Magen David, in the Star of David, you have 2 points that are in the middle. What is Shabbat? Even from the explanation of what we've just given as the Shabbat being something that the Creator created. But what did he do on the 3rd day? He created an energy intelligence. In fact, many people feel that the 3rd day is a good day. Why is the 3rd day a good day? Because it says Kitov twice. And the Zohar explains why, although people are superstitious in a way and like to begin things on Tuesday, which is the 3rd day, because it says Kitov twice. Obviously, this must be a good day, but from a Kabbalistic point of view, we would ask, why is it a good day? Why does it say in the Torah Kitov twice? Just to give you, for your reference, in the 3rd day, it says in beginning with verse 9, going right through 11, it says in verse 11, Vayar Alekim Kitov, and he saw it was good. And generally he said that with almost all of the other days. But then in verse 12 again he repeats it and says Vayar Alekim Kitov, and the Lord saw that it was good. Therefore, from that has emerged the idea that Tuesday is a good day. You're moving into a new home, or you're establishing a new business. Tuesday is the good day to begin that kind of venture. But why was the 3rd day Kitov? So the Zohar says, because it's Tiferet, and Tiferet has that power to balance. And therefore, in the Magen David, from the upper triad, the Sphira would be Tiferet. The lower triad, it would be Yesod. Again, the balancing agent. What, in essence, was Shabbat different? And why do we say that Shabbat is something special? Or, Vaikadesh Oto, the 3rd day, the 7th day, Shabbat, he made it holy. What about the 3rd day, and what about the 6th day? That, in essence, is the question that the Zohar is asking. And again, the answer is from the Zohar, but I will just read it briefly, that it's a beautiful Zohar, which one day we hope to translate, because this is another section which has been deemed to be too difficult, like Parashat Pinchas, to translate. However, it's beautiful. And so he's saying, in essence, why is this different? Because it says, Vayishbot, like it says, Kitov. Good. So is Shabbat. Good. But the answer is, he says, because the word Shabbat is not what you think it means. It does not come. It does not come. In other words, on another level. The word, when it says Vayishbot, it is not from the word Shvita. The word Shvita may come from that. Why? Because generally people on strike, I guess if they're not working, they don't feel then they really don't have to perform that kind of labor that they abhor to begin with. As I said at the very beginning, 99% of the people in this world are doing things which they would prefer not being where they are and doing something else. So when they finally have the opportunity to strike, what they're in essence, they're feeling good because now they don't have to perform that kind of job that they don't want to in the first place. But that's not what Shabbat means. He says it is called Shabbat, kevan shehi mitateret ba'avot, as he mitchaberet umit'achedet bahem liot echad. V'nikra hakol Shabbat. Dahainu, what does it mean? Shabbat, shin bet taf, hi otiot shin bat. Shin, harei yamidu shehi sod shlosha avot amitachdim bebat yechida. In other words, Malchut, which is the seventh day of creation, that's the code name for the seventh day. What does Malchut generally mean? It means the manifestation of everything that preceded. You might say a building, a completed building is the Malchut of what? Of thought, the idea, all of the contractors, all of the work and thoughts of the architect, all of that become ultimately manifested as one complete unit, where? In the Malchut. In the Malchut. On the third day, where you only had the manifestation of Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet, says the Zohar, on the third day you had a force that was created, by which, if you know how to make use of that force on Tuesday, the force is there for you to connect with, and you create symmetry. Why does it say kitov, kitov? Does that mean Tuesday is always the best day? In other words, everyone who began a business on Tuesday, everyone who begins a marriage on Monday night, everyone who knows. I say, when they say everyone who knows, meaning you imagine how many people don't know and get married, let's say, on a Sunday night, which is, from a Kabbalistic point of view, a disaster. A disaster. So it's always recommended from the Zohar, it stems from the Zohar, get married on Monday night, because Monday night is already Yom Shlishi. It's already the third day, and it says in the Torah, Kito. Does that mean now that everyone who gets married on Tuesday has lived happily afterward, right? Is that true? From those who at least know, does every marriage remain that way in this happy condition because Kitov said it's good? The answer is no. Why not? Because in a potential state, you can make use now of this force called symmetry. If you know how to connect to it, on this day it's available for you, which is not available on Monday or on Sunday or Monday, and it is not available on Wednesday. On Thursday it's not available. It's available on Friday. But you have to make the effort. You have to make the effort to make those connections. The Zohar says, Malchut, he mitachedet bebat yechida. She combines everything into one unified whole. You do not have to make the effort to make a connection with it. Whereas we asked, why isn't Tuesday Shabbat? It also has this aspect of symmetry. Also where there was an infusion of this neutralizing power, the filament, which we said God made the seventh day holy. Why did he make it holy? Because he injected and he infused the cosmos with an inbuilt filament. What about on Tuesday? What about on Friday? He also injected into the universe that force, but not the force by and within itself would combine right and left. That would be left to man, or that would be only in a potential state. You'd have to work and make that kind of energy, thought, intelligence of restriction bring about the symmetry of that day. You'd have to work for it. It doesn't, because it's been established, it's in a potential form. The Zohar says on Shabbat, Hi ma'ateret et kulam. She crowns all of the days of the week. What does it mean, she crowns all of the days of the week? There is no effort on our part that is required to create the symmetry of the world. It was created with an all-inclusive, all harmonized, without our effort, without our intervention. That's what he created. And why is it called that he created? And why is it called Shin Shabbat? Because the Shin, again, without going into the details, the Shin represents 3 columns. She is the daughter of Shin. She is the daughter of Shin. Not that Shabbat means strike or resting. Nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. He finished his job by Yishbot. And what did he do? He made Shabbat. He made the Shin Bat. He made this day be the daughter of symmetry. She was automatically created as a daughter of symmetry. That's where the word Shabbat comes from. It has nothing to do on another level of understanding with the aspect of not working.
Well, she's not symmetry then. She's the daughter of symmetry.
That's right. Why is she called the daughter of symmetry? Because she crowns all of the days into one unified whole. She. All of the 6 days, right? Which represent 3 diversified forces. Even on Tuesday, it is a diversified force called the force that can neutralize, the force that can balance. Yes, but it is not a balanced force of all 3.
Almost like saying back to the original state, where there was no separation between one day to the next.
Okay, that's right.
The mother of the 6 days.
That's right.
Only, but it's
That's right. She is the seed. She is the seed. She is the final culmination. What is the seed? The seed, again, represents the original. What was the first aspect? The seed. She represents the seed all over again. That is Malchut. What's that?
It was the thought from the start.
That's right.
I mean, the Shabbat.
Because what was... That's right.
He revealed those 6 days to make sure that the Shabbat is there.
Because without the 6th components, Shabbat could not be revealed. Nice.
So nice.
Shabbat could not be revealed.
It's like the fruit, the apple.
That's right. Why do you have to go through these stages? Because that's the way creation is. To have the ultimate fruit and the seed, it must go through these series of energy intelligences.
Shabbat is not a separate entity like each other day. It's really the combination of all
It's the harmonization. It's the completion of all of the days. But the 3rd day and the 6th day, which is defended in Yesod, they are not a harmonizing by within itself energy intelligence creating symmetry in the world. On Tuesday, on Friday, if you know how, you make your proper connections, you activate Teferet, which is the 3rd day, you activate Yesod, which is the 6th day. By so doing, you then create a balance and a harmony between right and left, between Erev and Boker. But on the 7th day, You're saying, why doesn't it say Vayera Vayboker? No. Because Shabbat is not another third column force that was created. No. She is the culmination of everything into one unified whole. Aharon, who was the chariot of Hod, left column. Then we know at the end he reverted back to being Chesed. He was the high priest. He was the high priest. Who was the chariot of Chesed? Avraham. Of the Sfirat Chesed, meaning that all unified whole. There was already Avraham. Now along comes Aaron the high priest, who is the chariot of Hod, the fifth Sfira, meaning the fifth day of the week. And because of wonderful things that he did, he created peace in the world. He created harmony amongst man and wife, between friends, if there were disagreements. This was the attribute of Aaron, and therefore the Midrash and the Zohar says, he earned the right to become the high priest. By earning the right to become the high priest, he was designated as the chariot. Not a new chariot, but he was also symbolic and representative of the Sfirat Chesed. Why did you need this procedure? There was Avram already. He established Chesed in the world. So the Zohar says the same idea. Because Hod is actually Malchut. We discussed that on Lag BaOmer, what Hod Shebahod means, because in essence, Hod and Malchut is one and the same. I won't repeat it now, but if you want to know more deeply what I'm referring to, on Lag BaOmer it's more fully explained. Aaron, when he became the Sfira of Malchut, he already was after revelation. It was all after revelation. We learn from Aaron that despite the fact, or you might say because of the fact that he was Malchut, but because he performed these different menial, not chores, but endeavors of bringing harmony to the world, bringing harmony amongst people, he achieved Chesed. There was already that chariot of Chesed by Abraham. But that, after revelation, it was within the power of man. The power of man, like which is not in the fruit. The fruit, it's automatic. What happens? You plant the seed, out comes a tree, but it's already inbuilt. When the fruit comes out, you know what was the objective of the original planting of the seed? The fruit. Would anyone plant the fruit if there was not going to be a fruit at the end? Would he plant the tree, plant the seed? No. The objective was the fruit. There it's inbuilt. With man to achieve a complete unified whole of Chesed, it requires work. So it was Aharon, who was Malchut, in a sense. He was there to show us that by effort, we can achieve Chesed. So what is Shabbat? It means Shin Bat, that everything is as one unified whole. With that in mind, with this explanation of the Zohar, we now can understand much of and come to some of the answers of what we had asked concerning Shabbat. About working. From the last explanation of the Zohar, even the word Vayishbot has nothing to do with the aspect of working. Has nothing to do with the aspect of working. And we understand now that on the seventh day, he did work. He created a Malchut, that Malchut now created this one unified whole. Brought together all of the Sfirot into one unified whole. So he had to work. And he worked. And by bringing that, he brought all that together. When he says here, Ki sheshet yamim asa Hashem et hashmayim ve'et haaretz ve'et hayam v'yanach bayom hashvi'i. All of a sudden now in the Ten Commandments, it says, Vayanach bayom hashvi'i. A new word comes into position. Vayanach. Nach.
Vayam. Why should you mention Vayam? From all the things, why Ayam?
Okay. All right. But he's telling us all of creation. Et ha'aretz, et ha'shamayim, et ha'yam. And he says, Kol asher bam. All of them. So they're the major items that we have in the universe. Everything else is within them. The heavens contain all the stars and all the mazalot. The earth contains all of people and those living creatures. And a third species is the water. Something else, which is concealed, which has life in concealment of water. That would be, these are the three aspects. Each one in essence representing the elements. Right? But then he says, Vayanach. Vayanach. Bayom hashvi. And he rested. So we asked, is it referring to that he rested? We just got through saying now, with beyond any shadow of a doubt, that the Creator was very busy on the seventh day. He was very, very busy. There was no question that he was not resting. He was working. He was working to make what? The crowning of all differentiated, separate entities, thought, energy, intelligence, and bringing them into one unified whole. This is what he does. And this is, in fact, what the Kabbalists would do on Shabbat. And therefore, on Shabbat, he was very busy. He was very busy. He was not resting. Then why does he inject the word Vayanach? So it doesn't mean no longer to be a waiter. It does not mean the other physical chores. Then what did he mean? What he was saying was that on this day, he did not, by crowning of all of the separate, individual, differentiated thought, energy, intelligences, by bringing them all together, by bringing plus and minus together, not to remain constantly in the battle, he brought them to a rest. He brought them to a rest. He brought not only positive and negative to a rest, but even central column was brought to a rest. Because central column is a thought, energy, intelligence that has the potential, like the filament, to bring positive and negative together. But the filament works. In order for the filament to produce a circuit of energy, it's got to work. Filament doesn't work, what happens? It reverts back to short-circuitedness, the battle of right and left poles. So what happened with the filament? It's put into position, and it's got to constantly be working in its form of rejection, of restriction. But on came Shabbat, Vayanach, everything rested. All three components, right, left, and central, both of the upper triad, which was potential, and the lower triad, which was actual, all six were laid to rest. No action. No action.
Why didn't say Vayanchu?
Vayanach, he's not referring to God.
Why didn't say Vayanchu? Vayanuchu.
It's one.
Vayanach, you mean
Why
individual.
didn't he say Vayanuchu? All the different ones rested.
Vayanach, they all rested as one. As one.
They were finally all in place.
Vayanach, Bayom Hashvi, that's the culmination. They all came to a rest, as if they don't even exist. As if they don't even exist as energy forces of right, left, and central. Not even central on Shabbat.
Is that proper Hebrew? Vayanach to plural?
Yes, to indicate unity. That's right. That's right. That's what the Zohar says in Parshat Vayakel. I'll give you the pages on. What's that?
It wouldn't be the first grammatical pronoun to deal with the Bible, and that's if you look into singular or plural. In this case, Vayanach instead of
Vayanuchu is making separation.
Right.
Vayanuchu, it makes separation.
Vayanuch.
ויחן ישראל כנגד ההר, ויחן.
Vayichan.
The whole nation.
Yeah. Right.
In single.
Right. As unified. Yes. It's proper. It's a problem.
Because we're taking every word so far literally to what it really, really means.
That's right.
So
That's right.
I'm just looking to look at this word
beyond
as it really,
grammatical.
really means.
Yes. Good.
Yes?
Good. No problem. No problem.
Vayanach is let go. Also, they let go of the word.
Right. Well, that's what we say in the morning classes, to let go. The illusion is the problem, right? Once you let go of the illusion, David, no more problems, right? It's the illusion that is our problem. Is there unity in the whole world? Of course there is. It is our illusion that everything is fragmented. Everybody is separate. Everyone is trying to do this to me, or I'm trying to do this to everyone else. Those are the illusions. But in essence, everything is in its unified state.
They were saying that Vayanach also means to let go. So does
Right.
it also mean that God let it go?
No, the right, left, go. I mean, what does the right do all week? Wants to control the left. All in a pure, let's say, a thought, energy, intelligence. Wants to share. What could be wrong? But you got to be busy sharing, right? It's activity. Activity is illusion. Activity is illusion.
The filament was no longer needed.
What?
The filament was no longer needed. On Shabbat.
That's right. It was laid to rest. On Shabbat, it's laid to rest.
Because you had everything was whole and complete at that point.
That's
Why
right.
do you need the filament? What
That's
no
right.
longer served? There was no longer a need.
And it didn't even want the art of restriction, which we know restriction is what Kabbalah teaches us. Achieve the level of restriction, you will achieve the level of balance, right? But it requires activity, doesn't it? Unfortunately, you have to work to restrict. That's right. That's right. That's right. You've got to deal with both at the same time. That's
why we
right.
say every Shabbat we have revelation. If you go back to the revelation.
I was going to come to that. Right. Okay.
Sorry.
Beautiful. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, I'll come to that. I don't know if we'll have time, but I want to cover now. But in essence, we understand now what's happening. There's cosmically, everything is laid to rest. Everything is quiet. That's the way it's up there in the cosmos. That's the way it's up there. And so when he says, Al Kain Berech Hashem et Yom HaShabbat Vayikadsheu, and therefore he blessed that day. What do you mean? What is blessed? All right, we have the power of the Alabait will be coming out, and we'll find out what bracha means. But in a word, what is blessing? Like we've touched on it in the morning. One man's curse is another man's blessing. The market goes up. For those who sold short, it's a curse. The market goes down, right? For the one who sold short, it's a blessing. And for the one who, thinks it's going up, it's a curse. What is blessing? What is blessing? Is there such a thing as blessing? Because if you sell to somebody else can't. So for you, it's a blessing, and he's lost a customer. You've acquired a new customer, right? Well, where'd you get him from? From somebody else. So what's a blessing? What's a curse? Is there anything that could be a blessing for everybody? Is there such a phenomenon as blessing? Bracha. And yet, that was the principle of why the bet was chosen. If you read the Zohar in brief, because the word bracha begins with a letter bet, and bet has that power of providing blessing. What is blessing? In a word, says the Zohar, no illusion. It's good for everyone involved. Something that is good for everyone involved. Not for one it's good and for one it's bad, because if it's good for one and bad for another, it's an illusion. If we say, if that Shabbat is a day where everything is laid to rest, no illusions. Not the right is winning, not the left is winning, and not the central is really bringing all these forces together, because we even learned that restriction, the whole kav, the whole battle of the line is really an illusion. That's why even the whole Torah, we say, ultimately, what's going to happen with the Torah? It's going to disappear. But if it's eternal, how could it disappear? The answer is, because the Torah is not dealing with Ze'ir Ampin. It's not dealing with the reality level. It's dealing with the illusionary level. The things of a very mundane element, that's what we have to deal with. And you have to deal with that level. That's why we're here in the first place. However, the Lord in His infinite wisdom realized that we would never be able to succeed. Never be able to succeed. So at the original creation, He understood that there was a purpose of creating one day where there would be no effort, where at least, you wouldn't be the ping pong ball, battling, trying to keep your head above water. One day in the week, where you wouldn't have to make this kind of battle. So He created that for that purpose. It should be there on a potential level. At Revelation, as you said before, what are we referring to? The mitzvah of Shabbat, a commandment, a corruption, a fraud. Mitzvah, meaning you're commanded to keep the Shabbat. It's a fraud. What do you mean commanded? I mean, like, to do what? Well, watch the Shabbat, observe the Shabbat, all of those things. No. He's saying rest. What do you mean rest? Not to be. Work. We're not referring to physical labor. Vayanach, make sure that whatever you do does not create an initiation of, again, this mad war that goes on throughout the week, throughout the 6 days. Therefore, we understand, when I strike a match, what do I do? When I strike a match, what do? I activate, first, before that fire, I activate the electrons. I activate a negative force. Right? Striking by binding, right? We know what that means. By striking, it says striking a match. You strike a match? What do you mean you strike the match? You strike the what do you call that? The carbon. You don't strike the match. Right? You take a rod and you hit a stone. You say you strike the stone, or you strike the rod. Which is it? You strike the stone. So why do you say you're striking a match? I'm asking a question. What?
The negative material in the
You're igniting that which is in the match. It comes in contact, and you're creating a flame, light, beautiful, but it requires effort. It requires effort, meaning what? You're activating a right, you're activating a left, you're activating a striking.
Intrusion.
That's right. You're creating activity.
Your body doesn't get tired. I mean, you taking a book and you read, you are creating time.
No. I'm talking about striking a match.
Striking a match, you call it strike. I mean,
The match and the book and the carbon, before you activate that match, is in what condition? Condition of rest. A rest. He says, do not upset rest. That's all the requirement of Shabbat is. Do not upset rest.
it's an illusion, the match.
What's
so
that?
The body is not really, the match itself is like an illusion. You're not dressing, you're activating the match, but in your body, the match is for Shabbat. This is something that you are talking. Bayana, your body is the menucha, but the match you are creating, you're not doing so much of a pikuch.
But what was the revelation? The revelation says that if you participate in an action that takes something out of a potential restful state and puts it into an active state, therefore it says, and now we'll touch that as well, it says, you shall not do any work. Also your animals. Why? The animals can't do work? What's wrong with my animal working? I'm not working. What's wrong with my animal working? I'm not working. So why can't I have my animal, set him up in the morning and let him walk the whole field, give him a beat and let him walk? He also has to rest. Everything around me has to be in that same atmosphere as in the time of creation. The time of creation, everything on the seventh day was put in a restful state. If I want to connect to that state, if I want to be there in the world of reality, not in the world of illusion, you said the match and everything of activity we're saying now is really an illusion. People seek one aspect in life. Ask anyone. They have a word for it. Pleasure is pleasure. I know many people think that's the objective, but even when you ask a little more deeply, that same individual who says pleasure is the objective, ask him, why do you want pleasure? Because pleasure creates peace of mind, supposedly. If it's going to create a war for you, that same pleasure. I mean, you go down to Atlantic City, right? At the dice tables. What pleasure. But ask the one who loses all the time, how much pleasure is it? No pleasure. Because the objective is not, sure there's pleasure in rolling that dice. And I always wondered why the Talmud says that someone who plays dice is pasul to be a witness. He's invalid if he plays the dice tables. What about playing cards? What about other forms of gambling, right? No. That bothered me. What's the difference between rolling dice
And the stock market.
and the stock market? What's the difference? Now you had to go down to Atlantic City. And I wanted to observe these people. Beside the people that you see all kinds of people. That doesn't mean only Reform Jews go down there. You have Orthodox Jews also that believe that this pleasure might bring him rewards. I mean, why are they going down there? And I saw that these people have completely left the world of the physical reality. They no longer know that they're in this world. They are totally consumed in that dice play. It's an incredible thing. Incredible. First of all, they give you chips. If they gave you money, you'd see how the money is lost. Like this, what are you losing? You're not losing money. You're losing chips, right? That's why they do it. 1,000 chip is it's $1,000, but it looks like a chip. I mean, for these guys who can play $1 million with chips, they don't feel it. They only feel it later, right? But at the time, when you roll that dice, I saw these people, talk to them, call them. No response. They are in another world. So why did the Talmud say that they're pasul fe'edet? Because to be a witness, you have to have two, because we always said one could be an illusion. When you have two people relating the same illusion, you got to say there must be some validity, right? Two people wouldn't say the same thing. Two people can agree on the same thing. It's so unnatural that if they are agreeing on one thing, says the Torah, then it must be true. I mean, can you imagine? That's what the Torah says. But this guy here, who plays there, he is totally out. He is totally in another space, and he is out of touch with everything. Out of touch with anything. Only with those dice. I made a study of that. I wanted to know what could the Gemara mean here. He doesn't pick on anything. These people could not witness anything. They are totally out of it. All right? So there is a world that you can let go, and these people let go. It's unfortunate that after they got to pay up, that's a problem, right? So the pleasure isn't always, bringing you to the peace of mind. Not always, right? Not always. In fact, That's right. He doesn't have the seventh. Well, he thinks he's the seventh. He figures it out, right? He thinks he has Shabbat in the dice. Has 6 already, and he'll be the seventh, but he's not the seventh. So, when we say that Shabbat permits us to have this complete unified whole, so when you strike that match, and you're relating, and you have initiated dissension, there's activity. Activity does not mean peace of mind. Activity is not peace of mind. Your mind could be going and thinking. You may be sitting at a table or at a desk or in an office and just thinking. And there are people who have heart attacks sitting quietly in a chair because there's so much activity going on. The Shabbat is a force that says we can give you this complete harmony because that was the gift. In fact, Shabbat is called a gift. And for many people, they'd be wondering what kind of a gift it is. Isn't it a wonderful thing on a real hot day not to be able to go to the beach because you have to ride? I mean, what kind of displeasure is there by not going to the beach, right? Or turning on the television. I mean, look at the pleasure one can get. Why not? Why not? What activity is there? But the flipping of that switch is creating movement in electrons, creating movement in atoms. When you connect to activity, you've taken yourself out of, you can say, the illusion of peace of mind. I guess we have to call peace of mind an illusion because so many people don't have it. It must be an illusion. We talk about it all the time, right? Everyone wants peace of mind. And nobody gets it. There must be an illusion. Maybe there's no such thing. Maybe there's no such thing. But he found it, the Creator found it important enough to put it within the 10 Commandments, as if that was so important. Why was it so important? Because without the Shabbat, you can never connect to the reality of quietness, of peace, to the ultimate. I'm not saying that there aren't people who can achieve a certain level of quietness. With this understanding, then we have no problem understanding what constitutes work and what doesn't constitute work. There are 39 basic elements called, I don't want to use the word work anymore, but there are 39 elements that constitute what is prohibited. Again, what is prohibited? It doesn't mean prohibited. It means, with the assistance of the Talmud, to define what is called activity. Activity. Now we know there's activity in the mind. We know that there could be activity by signing a decree, 1492. Right? Isabella signed the decree. But there was not much work involved in signing that decree. But look at the bedlam. Look at the upheaval that a little signing created. So who are we to say what constitutes activity or what doesn't constitute activity? You go away on a vacation to the mountains, to Florida or wherever, or even to Atlantic City, to relax. Have peace of mind. Does that mean because you've gone to a certain place, you've achieved that kind of peace of mind? The answer is no. Because peace of mind, in a word, according to the 4th commandment of the Torah, peace of mind is the element where there is no activity. Does that mean the people in a mental institution that thinks about nothing except how we can enjoy, going in the wintertime to Acapulco, and how in the summertime he goes to Switzerland, to the Alps, right? Now, of course, we consider him crazy because he has total peace of mind. He's flying all around the world with his chauffeur and with his private jet, but he's crazy. He says he has peace of mind, no worries, no nothing. Those kind of people we have to lock up because they are not the normal people. Is that correct, Jonas? Right? You'd rather be inside with? No. I thought already you had converted to...
You'd rather be in the Alps in the summer.
Oh, you would rather be there. But you see, he could be there and really enjoy it. No problems of late schedules and no problems of impassable roads, no problems at all. Activity is the key word. Shabbat. Shabbat means that everything has been laid to rest, nothing more. All that is required if you want to maintain that connection with that supposedly elusive realm that is not ours, or for the most part, most people cannot achieve a space of no activity. Does that mean now that you can't be a waiter on Shabbat? The sages say, of course you can. Does that mean you can't invite 200 people to be with you on Shabbat and work hard? Does that mean you're not capturing that realm of peace of mind, of tranquility? The sages say, of course, because it has nothing to do with physical activity. Physical activity, or the absence of physical activity, has nothing to do with Shabbat. Nothing. You can work all Shabbat, as I say, when it comes Shabbat, for me, it is the most exhaustive day of the entire week, despite the fact that maybe lately I've started working during the week, but for me, it's really been Shabbat that is very exhausting, totally exhausting. I feel washed out at the end of Shabbat. I feel washed out. However, on another realm, if I've connected to this the state of non-activity, you have combined all of the 6 elements. And the Shabbat has this power, as we just stated in the Zohar, of bringing these 6. When they see the word Shabbat, when that power of Shabbat comes to face with these 6 other days, or these 6 other energy intelligences, which are always in activity, they come to an abrupt halt. They come to an abrupt halt. As if at that moment they say, well, you're here, in your presence, it's got to be quiet, no activity. Doesn't mean there's no physical activity, but the activation, initiation of any aspect that would create an arousal of a proton, of a neutron, of an electron, by your creating activity, you have taken the world out of its cosmic tranquil state. You have, in essence, created fragmentation. Therefore, which rabbis would rather never repeat, if one works on the Shabbat, one desecrates, I'll use their word, one desecrates the Shabbat, like you desecrate the Shabbat. How do you desecrate a Shabbat? You machalel Shabbat, right? You machalel Shabbat, you desecrate that's not the word. If you know a little Hebrew, you know what the word halal means. Desecration? Is that what the word halal means? No. It means space, vacuum. That's what halal means. So if you create a vacuum in Shabbat, and we know what vacuum means. Remember the story in the morning of throwing the stone? Throwing the stone. Impact, and what do you have there? From all this activity, what do you have around the stone? Nothing. Nothing. Empty. That's what activity generally winds up with. And then it gives you the illusion of circles around and everything else. Activity results in emptiness. Activity results in emptiness. Therefore, when we discuss about desecrating the Shabbat, we're not talking about creating, and the halacha is, according to the Torah, it is punishable by death. Not keeping the Shabbat. Now, rabbis, even the Orthodox rabbis, because not all the time do Orthodox rabbis have only Sabbath observers, right? There are people who are not Sabbath observers, who can pray. And then they're told, imagine a rabbi getting up and saying, now if you don't keep the Shabbat, you know what the ruling for that is? Death. You know how? By stoning. Let's face it. If you believe in the Torah, I'm not telling you here to believe or not to believe, but let's call a spade a spade. If you want to know what Shabbat is, now imagine telling people that you don't keep it. When there would be you would be stoned. Why stoning? No other way of killing it, killing a person, or for the court to mete out. What?
That's what they do in Jerusalem. They throw stones at cars.
They throw stones.
They do it in Shabbat.
Yeah, on the Shabbat.
That's a little mixed up, I'll agree. Over there's a little mixed up. But in any event.
In this case, nobody then is keeping
What?
Shabbat, not even the most pious person. Because if you have a lamp working on Shabbat, then
Right.
immediately this...
But if you go a little deeper, and no, the point I want to make.
What happened to stoning?
What?
Stoning, what happened?
You stone.
No, we didn't finish why stoning.
Why stoning? Right. There's no other way to mete out. If Mechalel Shabbat, meaning you desecrate the Shabbat, then they bet in, whatever there was at that time, this was the punishment. I had to do it through stoning. Yeah, that's the way the Torah metes out the judgment for Mechalel Shabbat. Can you imagine a rabbi discussing this? How many Orthodox people pick up phones at Shabbat, right? According to the halacha, now they can keep the Shabbat, they wouldn't smoke on the Shabbat, let's say. They pick up the phone, or let's say the air conditioner went off. What's so terrible of, putting it back on again? No work? Well, we've got that pretty well straightened out. But what does stoning mean? That's terrible. Who understands, even here? Those who do keep the Shabbat, you understand stoning? Let's be honest. You understand why someone who doesn't keep it should be stoned? But we as Kabbalists immediately will raise the question, why stoning and why not some other man? And what does stoning mean? So he goes into it, the Zohar. And without the Zohar, again, without the Zohar's interpretation of everything that we have discussed this evening, without the Zohar, there is no explanation to the Shabbat. Because all of that we've laid to rest. All those other explanations of why one should keep the Shabbat, we've laid to rest. It has no logical and no place within human society. No place. And now comes stoning. What is stoning? Why stoning? The Zohar says we're not talking about. In fact, it never happened. The Torah speaks about a rebellious son. The Talmud says, but it never happened. There's a Torah writing things that never is going to happen. But what is stoning? It's the equivalent when a stone falls on top of a guy's head and he dies, right? He was stoned. Stone bounces a certain way on the head, right? What happens? What happens? Everything goes out of whack. Everything goes out of whack. What happens when someone, and of course that was the only way. If he lost an arm through stoning, the stoning that the Torah is talking about means physical stoning of the head, naturally. How else would this person be put to death? Not that we bury him under stones, get a mountain of stones and bury him under. No, that's not what the Torah was talking about. Talking about stoning. That means one rock could have done the job. What does that mean? In essence, it wasn't talking about stoning. It was telling us that the idea of Shabbat, the way the Zohar says, is laying everything to rest, right? Besides stoning lays him immediately to rest. But forgetting that would be the more jovial side of stoning. But stoning, in essence, because someone has to get up and speak this way about Shabbat. It's become different things. it's become so distorted that, like you say, I mean, I witnessed on Shabbat people throwing big rocks at passing cars. I mean, where does it say? Oh, because, and then of course it does say in the Torah, someone who desecrates the Shabbat, throw a stone. And then of course if the windshield cracks and he's blinded, then of course he's put to death. But that's not the way the Torah said. The Torah says you got to put the stone on the guy's head. If he's driving in a convertible, I can understand. Maybe then you can throw stones. But not this way. This way he's not going to be stoned to death. So I don't even know how they permit themselves to throw stones, right?
So what is the stoning? What is the connection of stoning?
Okay, but in any event, it's become so distorted that they throw stones and permitted to put people to death that way. I mean, there's a distortion about the whole idea. The stoning actually, when the Torah, this is all in the Zohar, when he discusses the 4 aspects of death. There are 4 aspects. I mean, if stoning is not distasteful or kind of rubbing you the wrong way, I mean, I got a couple more that the Torah speaks about, which would make you a little turn upside down inside, so we won't go through that today. Let's pass over just this one meanwhile. I mean, but we have to be realistic. If we're talking about a document that's supposedly so precious and created a whole religion, I mean, it's got to be palatable for the people. You just can't indiscriminately say things and it has no meaning. That's what the Zohar comes forth to tell us, that it has yafeh. I like the way he says. It's nice. You want to say it means shvita. Good. Yafehu. Soda davar. But the real meaning of the thing is what we have discussed. That's the real meaning. Now when someone is stoned, someone is hit by a stone, immediately goes into what? Complete fragmentation. Nothing works. Concussion. Usually that is what does a concussion mean? He can eat, right? Through intravenously, you can keep him going, but nothing is functional. Everything is fragmented. The mind and doesn't work with the hand doesn't work. I mean, nothing is coordinated anymore. That's in essence what it means. What?
Not operable.
Not even operable. That's right. How are you going to correct it? Put a man who's in a comatose state. What do you do with him? You leave him there. Nothing. Nothing anybody can do for that. What does in essence mean? Why? Because there's such distortion on such another level that it's untreatable. It's untreatable. The aspect of Shabbat is, in essence, that kind of idea. If you keep the Shabbat, you get this kind of energy, thought, intelligence, which creates unity, creates peace of mind and everything else. That's why it's called a gift. But don't go out of the realm. You want to go out of the realm? Remember that what lays in store for you, remember the cosmos. And we began off, and we just have 2 more minutes left, we began off by saying that we are governed by the cosmos. How could we rule over the cosmos? How could we connect to another level that we will not be affected by the cosmos? That the 6 days of the week would be peace and tranquility. Almost an impossibility? No. We were given a particular gift on this one day. Make all your proper connections. Refrain from anything that might create a distortion, a fragmentation, not only within yourself, but within the cosmos. You've achieved the Shabbat. That's all it's about. It's not a precept. It's not. There's more to it, but
otherwise we really get stoned.
What's that? Right. Now, I mean, if we have another minute, stone is a good thing, right? Getting stoned is so bad. Now, why do they say stoned? It's the same reason. Because a person who is stoned, the physical is there, and if you want, and he suddenly sees himself on the 48th floor, looking down, he sees the floor right next to him. He leaps right through the window, right?